The best way to do this is to create a false duality, the illusion of competition between parties. We need a two-party system that constantly argues with each other in general, but still upholds the basic elitist policies we need to maintain our advantage. The beauty of this dominant two-party farce is that it not only gives the public the needed illusion of choice, it more importantly oppresses those upstart third parties. So we need to be vigilant here. We need to get the public so used to this two-party dictatorship that they don't even mind if the two parties are given direct control over most of the electoral process itself. They need to have the power of organizing the rules of electoral redistricting, the primaries, the caucuses and debates, and of course we, the ruling class, will moderate their actions through lobbying, campaign contributions, exactly what the free market promises, the freedom to manipulate everything. However, nothing's perfect and you can't be too careful, and sometimes good old-fashioned time-tested tactics are needed, and nothing is as old-fashioned as good old direct electoral fraud. So let's get some of our corporate buddies to build some voting machines with really terrible integrity and get them in as many critical spots as we can. Yeah, I know it's sloppy. It has already become public that the machines can be hacked remotely with about $10 in materials and an 8th grade science education. But since most Americans are completely distracted by their debt, lowering standard of living, and ongoing job losses, the liberal media falls on deaf ears. So, let's recap. Free-thinking people tend to recognize the need for ongoing adaptation and change, so we need to make sure education supports the existing tradition through mere rote learning, not critical, logical thought. Next, we establish clear limits of debate in the culture and make sure those who go beyond the pale are shut down by endless ridicule and debasement. Then we need to harness the herd psychology and guide it through our media to either identify with the issues we need in the forefront or distract them outright. As far as large-scale influence, we need to have the freedom to do whatever we want and to use our vast corporate wealth to influence both public opinion and the candidates themselves. Our legal status as a corporate person now ensures our free speech and hence free spending. Next, we create the public illusion of competition and choice and gain as much control over the election process as possible. Our demo publican pawns, with our endless sponsorship and lobbying, now handles this well, including the restriction of public debate and the denial of all interfering third parties. And if that wasn't enough, screw it. We'll just reorder the ballot counts ourselves with the black box voting hacks in the most influential electoral states. And so it goes. Since the beginning of civilization, those in power have successfully restricted the interests of the majority by regulating their values, by controlling resources through money, not to mention controlling the very processes that exist to challenge them. Is it a conspiracy? Do such powerful men meet in dark rooms and work to figure out how to keep their power? Actually, no, not as much as you might think. You see, the hilarious thing about all of this is that such a process of manipulation is actually self-generating, justified in a step-by-step manner, with basic self-interest guiding the whole way. You see, the real corruption is not occurring in backroom meetings or at the docks. The real power resides in how you, the public, actually perpetuate, condone, and support the very underlying systems that oppress you. And as you stumble around this experiment we call global society, you can't help but feel an increasing sense of unease, perhaps even frustration, with respect to how we, the human family, have chosen to organize ourselves on this little planet. The late astronomer and well-known advocate of scientific thought, Carl Sagan, his famed PBS series Cosmos, once invited the question: if we were visited by a superior species from another part of the galaxy, and were forced to explain to them our stewardship of our planet, not to mention the state of human affairs today, would we be proud of what we described? How would we frame our explanation of how almost half of the world, over 3 billion people, are either barely surviving in abject poverty and sickness, or are simply dying off unnecessarily at a rate of about one person every couple of seconds? all occurring in the wake of an advanced technological reality where we could easily feed, clothe, and house every family on Earth in a respectable standard of living. How would we frame the global warfare, 230 million killed by their fellow man in the past 100 years alone? Based on what? Meaningless territoriality, resources, dogmatic, obsolete ideologies? Again, this all occurring in the shadows of a looming scientific recognition that we are indeed simply one family, sharing one household, bound by the exact same laws of nature, and hence the same unifying operational ideology. How about our economic system? The bedrock of what defines our society, not to mention our dominant motivations. How would we explain the reality that rather than organizing ourselves efficiently as a single system to properly manage this household we share, we childishly divide and compete and exploit each other through an archaic, completely environmentally decoupled game? A game, by the way, which not only appears to perpetuate a vast spectrum of social atrocities, but now seems to be further destabilizing society, decreasing our public health. Sorry to say, as an individual, I really don't care what you believe, nor do I particularly respect it. Why? Because I don't really respect what I believe either. There's no evidence to show that any of the traditional values, establishments, or social structures, common practices we have today will be relevant tomorrow. The only thing that appears to stand the test of time is this very notion of change, the ever-evolving understanding of ourselves and the world we inhabit. Perhaps some might think that that's actually the definition of human intelligence. What do you think about that? Less about what we know, more about how vulnerable we are. So when you look out your window, ask yourself, do you see intelligence or do you see dogma? Do you see a culture listening and working to realign itself with the ever-emerging natural orders as they unfold? Or do you see desperately stubborn efforts by many, particularly those in positions of power, trying to keep everything the same to the detriment of the entire human experiment? You know, like you, I might be only one member of this family that is now 7 billion strong. And like most families, yeah, sometimes it's hard for us to agree. But sometimes things get so bad, we need serious intervention. The following series is that intervention in the hope to salvage what is clearly a culture in decline.